Nothing you hear in this program constitutes investment advice. It is an expression of opinion only. This is Frisby's Bulls and Bears. Talking money and markets, what's happening and why. We talk to the experts, the traders, the investors, and the companies they're investing in. You're listening to Frisby's Bulls and Bears with Dominic Frisby.
Hello and welcome to Frisby's Bulls and Bears with me, Dominic Frisby. The show was, of course, Commodity Watch Radio, hosted in association with Mindsight, but we've changed the name. Now it's a cloudy winter's Sunday afternoon here in London, and I'm sitting in the Radisson Hotel in the centre of town with Robert Prechter. He's just got off a plane that was delayed by 3 hours due to paranoia, it seems, but he's here with us now. And for those of you that don't know Robert, he's the author of some 13 books on socioeconomics and market behaviour. Many listeners will have read the compelling Conquer the Crash. He graduated from Yale University in 1971 with a degree in psychology and has been publishing the newsletter The Elliott Wave Theorist since 1979, and he's the president of Elliott Wave International. And he believes that social and economic trends can be predicted using wave principle. He's famous for his many excellent market calls. Recently he advised clients to go short in 2007 and to cover in late February 2009. In early 2010, he was telling them to go short again, to go 200% short. And since then, we've had quite a correction. Robert, thank you so much for coming on the show. You've something of a reputation as a bit of an uber bear. I mean, what's your outlook at the moment? Is it negative?
Well, just to put that in perspective, back in the 70s, late 70s and early 80s, people thought I was a super bull, and I was. But we have, in my view, ended not only a bull market from 1982 or 1974, which I think might be a standard view, but also a longer progression of waves from 1932 and perhaps even longer than that. So I think the type of top that has been building since 1998 through 2007 is of such large degree that you really have to go back to something like the South Sea bubble in England to look at the kind of juncture that I think we have passed, and also the kind of outcome that I think eventually will resolve itself over the next few years.
So, I mean, when I look at a long-term chart of the Dow, I mean, it's the mother of all double tops, isn't it?
Oh, it's tremendous. In fact, the recent high, January 2010, looks very much like a right shoulder, if you're a standard chartist, to the tops of 2007. So I think we're set up from so many different points of view: overvaluation, technical readings, waves of optimism and pessimism, and just plain market sentiment, that I don't feel in the least bit concerned about giving the kind of advice I've been giving, which is go to maximum safety. And you can't get hurt following that advice. Back in 1982, when I was very bullish and said you should be buying stocks, I was a little bit nervous because I was asking people to take some risk. Mm-hmm. But in this point, it's the opposite. You want to be completely as risk-free as possible so that when the next great buying opportunity does show up, you've got the cash to take advantage of.
Okay, I want to ask you what you see as risk-free, but before we go into that, I'd like to, I mean, what's your time scale and what are your kind of long-term targets? If we use the S&P as a kind of, as our benchmark.
Well, time has eluded me in the last 10 years because the bull market went on a lot longer than I thought it would. Then the top building process went a lot longer than I thought it would. Of course, once you see it building, you say, okay, I understand where we are, and you reorient yourself. So when I give out a time suggestion, it really is just that, a suggestion at best. Right now, I think a lot of time counts and cycles that I'm looking at point to around 2014 for a low, but that could come more swiftly if the market goes down as swiftly as it did, say, in 1930 to 1932, or it could take more time because of so many credit engines that we have around could help delay that to maybe 2016. But that gives you kind of a window of time. I'm not talking about 20 years, and I'm not talking about 3 months and a double bottom.
And if you were to look at, say, 2010, 2010, I mean, what are your kind of targets for this year, if you have any?
I believe that we are starting, and I'm leaving that open as to whether the market might make another new high. I don't think it will, but it might. I think we're starting the third wave down, and in the Elliott wave model, that's the strongest wave in the sequence. So what we saw in 2008 was just sort of a preview of what I think we'll see in 2010, 2011. Should be a very strong decline across the board, I think worldwide as well. Downside targets are a little bit elusive because I think we're in the middle, or we will be in the middle of a wave all during the year. So if the ultimate bottom is a few years away, I think you're talking about a market that could go from 5 digits in the Dow down to triple. In other words, back
into
under
the
1,000. And of course, that's very radical and seems crazy. But I think looking back, if someone in 1982 had said, look, the Dow's at 770, where do you think it'll go in the next few years? And someone said 14,000, they'd say he was crazy. In fact, when we were saying 4,000, people thought that was outrageous. So I think we're set up now for a complete retracement of what I think in retrospect people are calling a bubble. Back in 1983, what I was predicting was a mania, similar word. And historically, those are fully retraced. And that's what the wave count calls for as well. So I'm just calmly waiting. And we don't have to get there, but we have to be safe until we see where we're going.
Would your wave count be the highs of 2008 down to the lows of March 2009? Was that wave one or wave A, if you like?
Yes.
The bounce that we've just seen?
Yes, no matter how you count the peak in 2007, I count it as the B wave of an expanded flat correction, but it's equally valid to call it the final fifth wave if you count from 1974. Either way, we're starting a 5-wave move to the downside. We've had waves 1 and 2.
So the March lows are going to be retested, but to call for triple digits on the Dow, is it possible to reach a number like that under the monetary system with which we operate? Does that make sense to you? In a fiat-based currency? I mean, I can see the kind of old lows being retested if you measure it in gold. But with all the monetary stimulus and the monetary printing and everything else that's gone on, is it possible to reach those lows?
That's what most people say to me when I give them the opinion. They say it's not possible because the authorities will simply inflate. But what the authorities inflate with is credit. There's been very little money creation relative to the amount of credit outstanding. And the credit buildup in the decade of the 2000s was unprecedented. Banks and other institutions were lending to people who were literally broke and could not afford the loans. I think we have $40 to $50 trillion worth of loans that won't be paid ultimately. That money's going to disappear. People right now might say, I have $1 million worth of IOUs, so I have $1 million worth of value. And if those IOUs go up in smoke, as I think they will, that value goes away. And that is the essence of deflation, and that's the subtitle of my book.